WanderingWinder back with more Dominion. And so last time we looked at how deck control is really important, and how you can get it and how you can tell whether you can draw your deck or not. Uh, but in this game, we're going to talk about the other side of the coin, which is payload, and how that's actually still really important. So, first of all, there's a lot you can do on this board. It's very easy to thin. It's very easy to get deck control. We have Chapel to thin. We have a couple of villages. We have a couple of draw cards. So if you're not familiar with the cards, you can freeze the screen now. Anyway, um, yeah. So whatever we're going to do, we're going to start by doing that. So we're going to feel a little bit sad that our Chapel missed the shuffle here, but it's not the end of the world. Okay, so now basically so far, right, I've gotten a militia and then just deck control cards. If we play where we're totally ignoring, um, you know, what it is that we're trying to do in the game and just say, la di da, I'm just going to get my deck under control and then start buying provinces one at a time. Well, things will be okay. It's not going to be the end of the world. But even if our deck is pretty reliable, and this deck is actually only semi-reliable, whoops, would help if I didn't misclick. Um, right, it's still going to take quite a while. Like, this is turn 15. This is a lot better than if I would have just bought treasures and tried to get to province. But it's not great, right? Now, one thing I do want to note is that I actually have gotten more payload in my deck, in this deck, than just treasures, because I have the attack militia, which is going to slow my opponent down. So effectively, that's payload for me, even though it's affecting my opponent's deck control. If my opponent hadn't bothered to thin, the militia is going to be a big deal. Is it's going to be real hard for them if they don't have deck control to deal with a 3-card hand every turn instead of 5, right? Also, if I'm getting militia attacked, I need to draw more, as you might think. But this is not a great way to play this board, and the reason why is just a militia for payload, while it's a lot better than just getting treasures to buy things, still not that great. So one thing we want to look at here is the fact that gains matter. So if you're only gaining one thing a turn by playing villages and smithies, and then just treasures, you're buying one thing a turn, you're just using your buy, then it's going to take you, 5 turns to buy through whatever. It's going to be hard to outrace something that's just maybe not even taking the time to get deck control in some cases, although in this case with Chapel and the great deck control that's here, that's probably not going to be true. But in some cases, right, it's going to be a little bit hard to race. Um, but even if you are both going for deck control, as you should on this board, it's going to be important uh, to use the best payload that's available on the board, right? So let's play through the game another time. So here, there's a few options. So first of all, Festival is going to give me extra gains and it gives me extra money. So that's a pretty decent form of payload that I'm able to go after here, right? Now I don't need this Chapel anymore. I'm going to get rid of it. I'm going to get a militia. I'm going to be able to start building my deck up, right, and really taking advantage of the fact that I have deck control here. And therefore, right, be able to do something much better than otherwise I would be able to be. Let's get a little consistency as we start to keep building our deck up. So I can leave this village on top. I know it's there for next turn. And now I can say, well, you know, things are going pretty well for me. I probably didn't get enough draw to be able to support this here. Yeah. And you can see we're actually only about the same turn length, and I can attack more reliably. This is better than what I was doing before, but it's not that much better because Wine Merchant is kind of like a glorified treasure. So this is better. It's more reliable in hitting the attacks. It's being able to do things when you get to the end of the game. I have more gains in a single turn, so I can more effectively Duchy Dance, all of these kinds of things. But it's only incrementally better. So if we go again, what we're going to see is that if we go for something with Horn of Plenty, that's going to be even better still. Okay, let's draw you, grab a silver. Let's grab another silver here. Let's get our militia, because if this were a real game, we'd really be wanting to attack every turn. So this lets us get more of these things. And now the Horns of Plenty effectively provide what we're looking for in terms of payload, and we can spend our money doing other things like drawing cards for the most part. Let's grab a hunting grounds and another horn, another minstrel, and another minstrel, and a smithy. So now the important point is that we make sure that we're still drawing to fit the payload that we are. There's a reason I did the deck control video first. And then at this point we can get 7 provinces, right? With one more turn we could obviously get the 8th one. You see that was a couple turns faster and we did much more. And actually, even building this way, we're still going to be able to get the 8th one here by buying it. So you can see that the Horns of Plenty were a much more explosive form of payload here. Now, let's think about, okay, well, we want to be able to take some lessons for beyond just this board, right? So first of all, getting deck control is still usually really important. Duh. Second of all, attacks really matter in terms of payload, right? If I'm junking you, that affects your deck control, but it's like payload for me. The number of gains that you can get on a turn is really important because if I want to be able to continue to get bigger and bigger and bigger turns, I'm going to be able to need to gain more than one thing. And it's especially important that if I'm taking the time to get deck control, if I want to outrace somebody who didn't, I either need to be slowing them down with an attack, usually, or I need to be able to, well, it's not an exclusive or, by the way. It's logical or, which is and or. Anyway, um, the other alternative, which I can mix and match with the attacks to slow them down, is to be able to gain more than one big significant victory card in a turn. So, right, if I can double province, and it only takes me a couple extra turns to get to double province compared to when my opponent was single provincing, that's going to be good for me. And then also then having built bigger gives me more options at the end, right? So that's the next thing. And then the last lesson is, okay, well, how do we prioritize what is the better payload? And it's really not an easy question to answer in the general case. You want to be doing something that's going to get you more gains. You need to figure out how important the attacks are in a given game, right? Mountebank is a very devastating attack for an opponent who's struggling to get deck control. But against an opponent who already has deck control and they've got still, a couple of junk dealers or something, maybe it doesn't hurt nearly as much. So you need to understand, right, how devastating is the attack to my opponent's actual deck. That's where some of the interactivity in the game comes in. And then you need to figure out how is this game going to go, right? Is it a game where I'm going to end the game? Well, basically, right, you always have to be able to plan to end the game with a point lead. So is it going to be a case where I can end the game by piling out provinces or by piling out 3 piles with the help of my opponent, potentially, while I'm able to have a points lead? If it's going to be very fast like that, and speed is of the essence, then you need to figure out, okay, am I going for provinces or am I going for piles? And which things are going to enable me to do that? And do I have a plan to make sure that I have enough points when that happens, right? Okay, so that's one thing. The other thing, though, is if it's not going to be possible for one player working single-handedly to do that, right, then I really need to be able to plan to do that being end the game. Then I really need to be able to plan to see what is the way that I'm going to be able to score the most points in a short amount of time as our decks get to be doing bigger and better things. So, right, something like goons. You can look up goons. If I play 3 or 4 of them in a turn, suddenly I'm outscoring a few provinces. If I can do that 2 or 3 turns, it doesn't really matter if my opponent got 6 provinces. I'm going to have so many points, I'm going to be winning the game anyway. So you need to figure out, right, is there a huge reservoir of points there? Okay, then great. You may want to be playing for that huge amount of points. Or is there some way to end the game before such a big reservoir kicks in? Although in a lot of games, you're just racing to get, 5 or 6 provinces and maybe some duchies as a tiebreaker.